So with the current state our world is in, I have been thinking recently. I'm thinking in my head about what in the Bible relates to kind of what we're going through today, what scenario, what situation. And I was laying down last night, and it came in my head, it popped in my head that the story of David, and if you know it, it goes like this: David kills Goliath, right, with the stone, and then King Saul ends up taking him back, and they go back to the city, and the people love David. They adore David. People want David as king. They love him. King Saul then gets super jealous, right, and wants David dead. And so to flee death, David has to go into isolation. He goes into isolation. So we find that he later goes into the desert of En Gedi, and he is there for several years. We're not sure exactly how many, but we know it's not a short stint. During that time, he's being chased down and hunted down by King Saul and his men, and David is hiding in caves, and he's hiding in the desert of En Gedi. And I just thought about it, and I was like, you know what? How similar is that kind of what we're going through? We're all in isolation right now to flee death, right? It seems like. I was thinking about that, and I started thinking, and I started looking at the story a little bit more, and what we see and what we find out is that this time of isolation for David ends up being something that needed to happen. Because what we know later on is that David becomes King David. When King Saul dies, David becomes king, and we know that during this time of isolation, it's him and God. It's him and God in this desert, and God is equipping David to be what he's gonna be. And we just find how important this time of isolation is. And so as we're in our time of isolation, I'm just suggesting maybe that this time that we're in, maybe God wants to show us something. Maybe God wants to teach us something. I can't help but think that God's got something for everybody right after this. And maybe right now in this time, he's trying to equip you. He's trying to get you ready for what's gonna happen next. And it's so incredible to think that God will make something so incredibly amazing and do some amazing things in the middle. And right now we're in the middle. We're in the middle, and you need to know that God is there. And God is trying to talk to you. He's trying to speak to you. And if you're like me, you probably play too much video games, and you probably waste too much time, and you probably talk about doing homework, but you don't. And maybe right now, just maybe, this is a time that you can get to know God, and he can teach you something that he's preparing you for in the future. I think we all have something to learn right now. So I just want to encourage you with this. I just want to say, hey, look, God's not done with you. As we saw with David, it's not over. He might have thought in the desert, in the cave that he was living in for a long time, that, man, this sucks. But he didn't know what was coming after. We don't know what's coming after yet, but we know the God who's going to get us there.